So ends another Movies Unlimited party. This one was pretty good. I'd have to say the food was good, the drinks were good, the company is always great. Well, the comedian was it was okay. Some of the movies I came up with were it was hard to get 10 because there were a lot of good movies this decade. Almost Famous, Cameron Crowe's autobiographical look at his own life, where he plays an aspiring Rolling Stone writer and his adventures on the road with a rock and roll band. I thought that was a terrific movie. My favorite scene is where they're singing Tiny Dancer, and it really shows you how the importance of music in people's lives, and especially in the movies. Terrific performances all the way. Kate Hudson and Philip Seymour Hoffman as the great Lester Bangs, a rock critic, in support. Just a really winning movie. I've seen it a couple times. And then one of the funniest movies of the decade to me is Best in Show. I like almost all of Christopher Guest's movies, but this one was one of the tops. It was the one about the dog, people obsessed with dogs at a dog show in Philadelphia. You know, the usual cast of suspects in there: Christopher Guest, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara. Fred Willard is hilarious as the commentator. Just, gold brand comedy all the way. There were some really terrific documentaries this decade. I could think of at least 10 or 12, so it was hard to whittle down that list. But I have a couple on here. One is Enron, the smartest guys in the room. This movie really unraveled the whole Enron scam. It was fascinating viewing. It put some financial terms that you read about into perspective with great visuals. Also had a really cool soundtrack. I really thought this was a terrific, eye-opening documentary. And then another funny movie was The 40-Year-Old Virgin. I mean, Judd Apatow had so many hits this decade. This one sort of started the ball with Steve Carell. You know, most people knew him from The Office, and this made him a movie star. Great supporting stuff all around from that whole Apatow family of actors. Leslie Mann, Elizabeth Banks, Paul Rudd. You know, all of them wonderful, and a really funny movie and a great ending. I love the ending of this movie. And then another good romantic comedy, and actually a terrific romantic comedy, is High Fidelity, another movie that dealt with music. John Cusack, before he became an action star in 2012, dodging tsunamis, was really wonderful in this film, playing a guy that works at an old-fashioned record store, trying to get his romantic life together. Great support by Jack Black and Todd Lewis as the eccentric people that work with him. And here's another documentary, one that really hit home, called The Life and Times of Hank Greenberg. A really fine, well-made, well-researched movie about a superstar, baseball superstar that not that many people remember or recall, and about his roots of being a Jew and making it at a time when it was really tough for Jewish players to make it, and also a wonderful salute to baseball as the national pastime. And then Michael Clayton was a movie that I really loved and I've seen a few times. George Clooney was in a lot of good films this decade, but I really like this movie. He plays a fixer lawyer, and one of the last roles that Sidney Pollack plays his boss, and one of his last roles before he died. And then lots of terrific animated films. I mean, so many wonderful Pixar films, but I picked Shrek as my favorite animated movie of the decade. This is sort of a movie that ribs Disney a little bit. Jeff Katzenberg, formerly a Disney president, sort of has fun at their expense. And terrific voicing by Eddie Murphy, Mike Myers, Cameron Diaz. And the two other Shrek movies were good, but this one really was first rate all the way, and it worked on two levels, for kids and for adults. And then I picked a small movie called The Squid and the Whale with Jeff Daniels as the father you sort of love to hate. He's arrogant, self-involved father. He goes through a divorce with his wife, played by Laura Linney, and you see how this divorce affects his two kids. Noah Baumbach directed and wrote it, and another autobiographical story about his father. He's a college professor and a writer. Same for Baumbach's father, and this movie really resonated with me. Seen it a few times, and I'm going to watch it some more, I'm sure. And finally, I think one of the most underrated movies of the decade is Spike Lee's The 25th Hour. I thought this movie really packed a wallop. It stars Ed Norton as a guy that's ready to be thrown in jail for a long time for dealing drugs. He's got friends that are involved in Wall Street and how he deals with the situation and his relationship with his father, wonderfully played by Brian Cox. It's also set against 9/11, and it takes place in the financial area where that disaster occurred. So that adds an extra level of power to the film. Not a bad decade. There's a lot of good ones that I couldn't get on here, but you know, any of these are good. I'm going to watch them again. I hope people out there check some of these out if they haven't seen them. So salute.